In this episode, we sit down with Becky Downie, Olympic gymnast and MBE. We talk through the journey of how she got to the Olympic Games 3 times and also what it takes in terms of mindset to become an elite level athlete. She also shares with us some secrets from the Olympic Village. This episode is not to be missed. I hope you enjoy it. Becky, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I want to go back to the beginning. Where did your love for gymnastics start?
I just got into gymnastics really through a friend at school. Didn't know anything about the sport. My family were not particularly that sporty. And I did dance before I did gymnastics. And apparently I just begged and begged my parents to take me after seeing my friend do like tricks in the playground. And they took me, and I think they had no idea what we were getting into. I went from doing a couple hours a week at 7 years old to nearly 30 hours by the time I was 9.
Wow.
And that's been my life since, so.
Wow. 30 hours at 9 years old.
Yeah, mad.
It's like a full-time job.
Yep. And fitting in with school was a task. I think I didn't know any different because that was all I knew. But then when I got to the point where I could like finish education and actually could like rest more between sessions, that was like a revelation.
So talk to me through the, year 7 to 11 then. Was it that early on that you saw that there was something that you could do with this, that there was some real talent and you could take it somewhere, or was it was it a little bit later on, or how were those years?
At the time I grew up in the sport, and even still kind of now, you are, because it is quite a young sport still, as much as we are getting more longevity, you kind of classed as an elite really when you're like 9, 10 years old, which is quite mad.
Yeah.
And you turn senior, at least females do, when you're 16. So you can go to an Olympic Games at 16 years old, which is, you imagine the amount of training that you'd need to do that. That's why gymnasts generally start so young. And school was difficult to manage. We did early mornings before school. So we'd start at 7 o'clock and we'd finish at either 9 o'clock or 10, depending on what lesson I had. If it was a lesson like drama, then I'd be in till 10. But if I had like maths, English, science, then I'd be out the gym at 9. So it was kind of just planned around that. And then I'd either do an afternoon session starting at 1:30 till like 5:30, or then an evening session starting at 3:30 till like 8. And that was just pretty much every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I think that just shows the dedication and the discipline that's needed if you want to take it to the level that you did take it to, or you have taken it to, sorry. When was it that you went to your first big event, either the Commonwealth or the Worlds or the Olympics? Which one came first at what age?
At the time, the rules were slightly different. So I got to do my first Commonwealth Games when I was only 14. And I was still a junior, but I was in a senior competition at 14. So that was pretty cool, but it was quite daunting as well, like being thrown into the mix of seniors. And it was in Australia, so I was away from home for a month. So that was big for like my very first major, but also a really cool experience.
Yeah, wow, I can imagine. Just a quick one. On January the 18th, I'm going to be holding my first live event. It's going to be alongside 3 other phenomenal speakers, and this event is all about how to raise awareness around mental health, overcoming adversity and traumas and challenges, and different ways we can improve our mindset moving into 2025. I'm really, really excited for this event. There's going to be also an anonymous Q&A at the end. This one is not to be missed. If you want tickets, then see the first line in the description. Can you remember when it was that you got told when you were 14, 13 years old that you would be going to Australia to compete?
I can't really remember the moment that got picked, but I remember the year before I was injured. I had a stress fracture in my back. So I think it was like we were trialling to try and make it, but it was a bit touch and go as to like how healthy I was. And I remember going down with slightly watered down routines, but also still going and being on a stage like that. I had no idea what the sport was really like because I was so young. And like I say, I didn't grow up as a big gymnastics fan. I just kind of got into it.
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine how amazing and such a cool experience that would have been, especially at 14 years old to go. It's not like just going either to France or somewhere in Europe, going to the other side of the world.
Yeah,
how did you perform in that event?
Actually really well. Our team got a silver medal, so that was really cool. And then I got a bronze medal on beam. It was quite a surprise medal as well. A beam final is one of those where it's kind of who stays on generally.
Okay.
And I did do a good routine on the day. And I think to be so young, even like looking back now, I didn't really realise what I'd accomplished because you just kind of go through the motions. And I do wish that some of my younger comps, I got to go to some really cool places, but I do wish I was a bit older because you just take it in a lot more, and I guess appreciate it a lot more as well.
Just for the listeners that don't know or aren't aware, what is the beam? Talk us through that process?
So I do artistic gymnastics, and there's 4 apparatus. You have the asymmetric bars where you have a high bar and a low bar, you like swing around them. The beam is, I don't even know how wide it is, but it's like basically the size of an iPhone, pretty much, width, and long plank or boards, and you do flips and tumbles and stuff on it. Got the floor exercise, which is the big floor square. You dance and tumble to music, and then you've got the vault where you run and then hit the stationary vault and flip off.
Which is your favourite one to do?
Bars or beam? I quite like training floor as well, but I'm a bar specialist, so bars is probably it definitely is my event.
And why do you prefer that event? Is it because you're better at it, or?
I am good at it, but I think I wasn't good at it when I started. It's one of the hardest events, but I've had a lot of injuries in my career, and ankles for me have been a really big problem. And bars is the one piece that is much lower impact, obviously regarding your feet. And when I was injured, I was still able to train it. So I think kind of learnt to love it over time, and then just progressed and got better at it.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's kind of like me in the gym. I always hated training legs. So I tried to get better at training legs, but I still hate training them. I suppose it's slightly different. Yeah. But it's like if you do something you hate enough times, you'll learn to love it, won't you?
Yeah.
I love what you said though about, like I talk a lot about enjoying the journey and celebrating your achievements.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got a lot to celebrate over your career, but especially in them younger years, you never really take time to stop and reflect to what you've actually done.
Yeah.
And I'm such a big believer in it, and it's something I've really struggled with. You know, looking back, I'm 29 next month, and if 19-year-old Tom could see 29-year-old Tom, it'd be like, wow, like that guy's pretty cool, or he's done quite a lot. So for you to say at 14 years old, you even realise now at the age you are that, you know, you wish you could have just embraced that moment a little bit more.
Yeah. I think a lot of my younger competitions, like, I just went through the motions, I think. Like, I didn't know any different, and it was kind of just what I did. Whereas I think as I've had, I guess, more struggles in my career, as I've got older, you kind of look back and think actually what you managed to do, even just making it to a major championships healthy in one piece without being injured, never mind the medals that then come on top. It's a massive achievement. And yeah, being able to look back on my career, I still don't think I take it all in and appreciate it enough sometimes, but I do really love what I do. And you're right, it is about the journey, and I think that's the love for it is what's kept me going for so long.
It's hard though, isn't it, sometimes to look back and enjoy the journey and not necessarily be proud of yourself, but I feel like life is so fast paced. Like I was saying yesterday, I can't believe it's December. Like it just goes so quick. It's difficult, isn't it, to just look back and reflect? Yeah,
and I think as well, I don't know about you, but I'm really goal driven. So as soon as you've done one thing, it's like, okay, that's done now. Like, what can I do next? Yeah. So it's kind of, you're always chasing something. And like you say, you don't take that time to sit back and actually think, you know what, I am doing a really good job.
Yeah.
And I think the best times to do that is when you do feel like in a bit of a slump and you are having a tough time. You kind of look back and you're like, actually, no, I'm doing all right. Might not be where I want to be yet, but actually what I've done a hell of a lot.
Yeah, 100%. And the goalposts always move, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's, again, celebrating your achievements and taking that time to reflect. It's, you know, I do a little bit of one-to-one coaching around mindset. And I think mindset, as you will know, it's about your perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
And 2 things for me in terms of habits that change your perspective is gratitude and celebrating your achievements. Because we're in a world, unfortunately, where we're in an epidemic of mental ill health. And I believe that a lack of gratitude and a lack of not reflecting on what you've achieved is the reason for that.
Yeah.
You find a lot that people go, oh, when I've got that, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Or when I get there, I'll be happy. Or when I do that, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
If you constantly find yourself saying those things, quite often, you never really feel fulfilled or happy.
Yeah.
So if you can take time every day or, every other day or once a week or whatever to look at what you're grateful for and practice that and celebrate those achievements.
Yeah.
I think you feel fulfilled, but also you realise that you have achieved a lot, so you're very, very capable.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like you're fulfilled, but also then motivated to achieve even more.
Yeah.
Like you said, if you're in a slump, it's one of the best ways to get yourself out of it.
Yeah, I think for me, I completely agree. It's the little things, I think, that make the biggest difference, and that is sometimes what you really take for granted.
Yeah.
And like I say, just for how I look at my career, like just getting to a championships, being in one piece, because there's so many things that can break down along the way. You got to kind of just see the small achievements of you know, pushing through those hard sessions and, you know, getting those new skills in. And sometimes you put them in and they're successful, and sometimes you put them in and you have mistakes. And unfortunately with our sport, it is a sport where you make a lot more mistakes than you are with like success. So that's quite difficult to take from a young age because you're constantly like failing at something. But I think the reward when you actually finally do achieve it then feels amazing.
But you're always failing forwards though, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're always learning from your mistakes. And I think, again, you know, the expectations that social media has on us in today's norm is people like yourself that have achieved incredible things, and other, you know, business owners and entrepreneurs and celebrities, you know, they don't see the failures, they don't see the mistakes.
Yeah.
They don't see the getting up at ridiculous o'clock in the morning, having to train and go to school, then come home and then go back to training, and then, you know, nobody sees that sort of thing. They just see the very tip of the iceberg, don't they? And like you said, you know, you've made more mistakes than you have successes, but those mistakes is what's lined you up for the success that you've had.
Yeah.
I think it's an important message for everybody. It's that this highlight reel that we all see on social media.
Yeah, it's not the real deal.
No.
It's a small snippet of like a very big picture, I'd say. And yeah, you say the journey is important, and there's so much that comes into that. The results are great, but you are not going to really achieve the results if you aren't enjoying what you're doing along the way.
No, definitely. I saw Usain Bolt was like, he's got to where he is now from winning the 100-meter race that took him like 9 seconds.
Yeah.
But then doesn't show the 15 years of hard work before the 9 seconds.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really powerful statement. You know, obviously he's done incredibly well and he's got to where he's got to and all this money. People just see the 9 seconds.
Yeah.
But don't see the 15 years of graft before it. It's obviously very similar to yourself. All the events that you'll do in gymnastics will be, you know, what's the longest amount of time you might spend on one particular event?
In the competition?
Yeah.
Anything from like for about 40 seconds to a minute and a half.
So you're doing 40 seconds to a minute and a half where you'll win either bronze, silver or gold, and people will see that.
Yeah.
But then, like I said, not see that you were going to training at 9 years old before you went to school.
Yeah, even I forget that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's quite easy to forget,
Yeah,
but it's the, like we said, it's the importance of reflection and celebrating the achievements. So talk to me then. So you went to your first major event at 14 years old.
Yeah.
And obviously it went really, really well. Where did things go from there? Was that when things really started to pick up and progress in terms of your career, or? I
would say so. I think I didn't really know what the Olympics was, honestly. Like we weren't a super sporty family that like celebrated that type of stuff. But it was probably the year before that I kind of knew I had potential to go. And I was growing up in a generation where we were constantly trying to push the boundaries in the sport, and the sport was just slowly continuing to grow, which was really cool to see. So it wasn't really about chasing podium positions so much when I was younger. It was like, can we make a final? Can we get the team to this place? And the year before Beijing, so 2007, I did my first World Champs. But again, the rules were if you were eligible for the Olympics the next year, you could compete younger. So I competed as a junior at a senior World Champs. So much has like changed with the rules since, but that was really cool. And we got our team into our first ever team final, and that's like top 8 teams in the world. Wow. So that was an amazing experience. And the following year, it was kind of like, right, it's in there. We had a good team, and can we push for Beijing? And then Beijing was an Olympics really all about experience. I didn't really, like I say.
What year was Beijing again?
2008.
Okay. So how old
16.
were you? 16. Wow.
And that was a really cool experience. But again, I wish I was older to like take it all in, because it was probably one of my favourite places that I've been, and like the whole setup of that Olympics was mega. And then, things just then rolled from there. And I would say actually my career from Beijing to London, we kind of talk in cycles. We like plan for every 4 years. My London cycle, I would say, was probably my hardest, because I was seen as one of the top ones. And I think I was then just thrown into every competition to kind of compete. I didn't really have much of a rest. My body was quite injured. And I think I just struggled a lot of that cycle. I still had results and still competed, but I don't think I enjoyed it that much. And I think I learned a huge amount about like my body and I guess my love for the sport, really. And then after London, I didn't make the team. I was a reserve. That was really, really difficult moment in my career. it was kind of like the first time I'd ever really thought, do I want to quit?
Was London 2012?
2012.
Yeah.
And then after that point, I had about a month where I had some downtime. I really missed it. And I was like, my mindset was kind of, okay, if I'm going to come back, I need to make sure I'm undeniable so I'm not left off the team again. And then Rio Cycle, I would say was one of my favourites. It was the couple years when my sister then came up into national team and we managed to be seniors together. So that was really cool to experience a lot of our like big results together. And the sport was just on a massive rise. We were really challenging for medals at a lot of the major events like the Europeans. We got our first world team medal in 2015 and then made the Rio Olympics with my sister Ellie. And that was a really good experience. Comps didn't quite go to plan, so that was disappointing, but the overall experience was fab. And then after that, it was kind of like, oh, for a gymnast, I'm getting old now. I was 24.
That's crazy.
And again, I still loved it. And I was like, I feel like I'm constantly improving. I'm learning all the time. The sport is changing. I'm kind of one of the people that are helping change the sport. Why just stop? And so then there was a big push for Tokyo. And I didn't genuinely think I would go past Tokyo because at that point I knew I'd be 28. And then when COVID hit and it got delayed, I was 29. So in my head, there was just no way that a gymnast could do that much more. And then after everything happened, the year of Tokyo for me, not getting selected for the team, went through a really difficult time. I was kind of like, you know what, let's give it one more shot because I still think I'm good. And I didn't want all of that work to kind of go to waste. And I would say that this last Paris cycle has been the hardest of my career without a doubt. So many challenges to face. I didn't think it was, I hoped it was possible, but I wasn't sure how possible it'd be because of all the challenges.
What sort of challenges were you facing?
I had quite a few issues with my federation from the things that happened around the Tokyo selection. So kind of coming back and getting back into that space was tough. Working with certain people. There were some great people that really tried to help me along the way, which is one of the main reasons why I got to Paris. I had a complete change of training gyms. I think I needed that for like a fresh start to change settings, which was really good. In the process of my year of Tokyo, I lost my brother.
Sorry to hear
so that was a really big thing to kind of be getting over grief and stuff over the last couple of years as well. And I think that was just a lot. There's so much happened in such a real short space of time. And then, making it to Paris this summer and actually being there. And I don't know, that was probably one of the proudest moments of my career because despite the results, just walking into that arena, it was like a miracle that I was even there. So
that's incredible.
Yeah,
wow.
pretty cool.
No, very amazing. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you think that the journey leading up to Paris, because it was so challenging and you had so many setbacks, made it even more sweeter when you got there?
Yeah. Like, I didn't think, even down to the point of pretty much being there was like just constant battles. And I'd say a lot of mental challenges as well, because there was just so much that happened in those couple of years. But I think I needed those games to believe that I was good enough again, because I think a lot of people tried to make me believe that I wasn't after what happened before Tokyo. And I think, just walking into that arena, I'd say day one of walking into the arena was probably one of my proudest moments. Like, before we marched out, I started tearing up and the girls were like, oh my gosh, what's the matter? I was like, I'm good. But like the emotion is huge. Yeah. But I loved every minute of it. And I think just being back on a world stage, being back on the comp floor, I loved it. Yeah. And it was kind of like, this is what I've done it for.
No, it's incredible. It's the bigger the setback, the bigger the comeback. I love that. I think for me, that's what life's about, in your journey, within gymnastics and the Olympics and Paris, but, life in general, in other people's situations, life is going to throw you a whirlwind of shit. It's about how you navigate your way through it. It's ups and downs and good times and bad times and, unfortunate losses and grief and trauma and adversity. But, your mindset in particular, it's like, keep at it. One day at a time, the small wins, the 1%ers, and stay resilient. You'll get where you want to get to.
Yeah.
I think, I love that. I think that for me, this is what this podcast is all about. I lost my brother 2015 and went through that whole process, and then I really struggled with my mental health. And like I said earlier, I managed to get up in front of a school and share my story, which was such a great experience for me, and I've continued to do that. But for me, Tom's Talks is sharing my story on how I overcame adversity to get to where I am now. But I'm just one person with one story. You know, there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people out there like yourself that have got an incredible story to tell. And again, however you overcame adversity, that's why I bring people on like yourself to share that story, because, you know, I can imagine that there might be, you know, potential gymnasts and people wanting to aspire to get to where you got to, and they might be going through a difficult time right now, and they may be thinking about quitting. But just listening to what you've just said, that could be the motivation that they needed to keep going and get to where they want to get to.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things, I think, is finding something that you love. And I think for me, so many people have said, like, why have you stayed? And especially because I've had such a long career, I've had so many injuries. I grew up in the generation of gymnastics that was really pretty harsh. But being able to see the change, be able to come out the other side, and like, I genuinely do love what I do. And being able to go into the gym, swinging around on bars, you know, flipping around, that's what I feel like I was born to do. And I love it. And it's kind of like, now for a gymnast, I'm considered really old. And I think after Paris, so many people were like, oh, she's like done. And I actually thought I was done too. But, you know, I'm like, I'm still good.
How old are you now?
I'm still really 32. I enjoy it.
That's old in gymnastics.
And other sports stay. So at the minute, I'm taking a break. It was so frowned upon as well in our sport to take more than a couple of weeks off. So I've never done that in my whole career, like ever. You kind of get like a week, maybe two after a major champs, and that's it, and you're straight back to it. I think prior to this, the longest I'd had was after Rio. I had about 4 weeks. And then coming back was so hard. So now I've like learned to maintain my body a lot more through strength and conditioning. And I haven't been at this point in time in the gymnastics gym for 4 months. So that's crazy for me. Feels like such a long time, but it's really nice to just take opportunities, do other things, let my body have a rest, like physically and mentally. But also still, like for me, it's keeping fit, because if I completely stopped, if I did want to come back, it would be way too hard.
Yeah, I bet. Just a quick one before we get back to the episode. We're trying to hit 5,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So if you love this podcast and you love what we're doing, then a quick and easy way to support it would be to hit the subscribe button. Thanks very much. Now let's get back to the episode. You spoke earlier about the different cycles, and I understand obviously from Olympics to Olympics there's 4 years, isn't there? What is that 4-year process like? Because you're building up to this Olympics, and maybe from one Olympics to the other, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're seeing it's in 4 years' time. So surely whatever I do now is not going to make much of a difference.
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. So when I was growing up in the sport, I didn't understand this enough, and I think not many people did either. Like, the mindset around a cycle has really changed now. And I think I didn't really class Beijing as a cycle, because I was kind of like up and coming, a junior, and you kind of just got there. But then London cycle, like I say, I was thrown into like every competition. There are multiple competitions you can do each year. There's generally for us a Europeans and a World Champs every year, unless it's the Olympic year and there's no Worlds, it's then the Olympic Games. So preparing just for 2 majors every year is kind of like what we do, and then there's little comps in between, like an English champs, a British champs. They might send you to different internationals to test new skills, get experience, that type of stuff. But I think before it was kind of just like you wanted to always be on everybody's radar, so you were picked for every team and you were just always at it. Whereas after London, I kind of learned the importance of like actually letting your body have a rest. And that was really when I came off my feet. My feet were so injured, they had been for years. I was constantly in a boot and out a boot, and it was just not productive. And that was kind of when I put my foot down and was like, actually, if I want 4 more years for Rio, then now is the time to get my body fixed. So we went through surgery after London, took the time. That's kind of when I became more of a bar specialist, because I was like, I need to stay off my feet and prioritise bars for at least a year. And then it kind of became bars was more my thing. And now I kind of see it as, I've never seen a cycle as actually like the beginning of it. It's kind of a bit irrelevant. Like, obviously, if you have a huge amount of time out of the gym, you can lose your skills, you can lose a lot of physical abilities, then it's hard to come back. But I think with the injuries I've had over my career, I've had a lot of time where I've been off skills, and I am so experienced now, I know my skills will come back if I keep physically fit. And a lot of it is mental. And I don't think the mental aspect of gymnastics was really touched on for a really long time in my career either. So like I say, after Paris, it was kind of, I really thought I was retired. So to come back, I knew my life was going to change either way. But to actually just take a break, I've never done it. And I'm kind of like, if the end goal is 4 years or just more years in general, then this these months, like it is a bit irrelevant in that way. But for me, I'm someone that's like, how can we still make gains? So my body still needs some time. My shoulders have needed to go through a rehab process. So I'm working with my strength and conditioning team and physios and stuff right now just to reset my body. So if I do want to come back, then we're ready to go.
Where is the next Olympics?
LA.
LA.
One of my favourite places ever.
I was going to say, that's not a place you really want to miss, is it?
And it would be a challenge because I'd be 36. And it's not impossible because I think what I've managed to do with my body for the last 4 years, it's not going to be any different. So I think I've learned a lot, that's been really good. But you don't really see many female gymnasts competing past 30. There was a couple in Paris, but to be challenging for medals and finals still at 36, like that's not really been done.
I was just going to say, has that been done before?
I don't think so, not on women's side.
They're going to prove them wrong.
Yeah, it could be a good challenge.
What's at the Paris Olympics, would you have been the oldest person to compete in terms of, obviously your age? I know you're not old, but when you talk about gymnastics in that world,
I don't think I was the oldest. I think one of the Brazilians was a year older than me. I think she's 33. There was, I think, around 5, might be slightly off numbers, but around 5 that were over 30. So that was like a really big change this Olympics to see like female longevity, because before that would be quite unheard of.
Would you put that down to the advancements in recovery and rehabilitation and sports and nutrition and everything? I mean, obviously over the last 10 years especially, but especially like in the last 4 years, there's so much out there that helps people, especially top level athletes like yourself. Would you put that down to that as to why you're able to compete a little bit longer?
I would say there's so many things that have improved. I would say I started to see a shift in the sport really after like London. And before that, there was just a lot of old school mentality around gymnastics, and we didn't utilise all of these performance assets like utilising nutrition. We were always brought up to believe that the smaller and lighter you are, the easier gymnastics is, which, yes, that's true to an extent, but also you need fuel to be strong and to have energy and stuff like that. So the first part of my career was quite dangerous in terms of like weight and how we were looked after. And I think that's made a massive shift. And just the level that we were pushed to when I was younger as well, the amount of injuries I had was just unbelievable. And now, again, it's like getting better physios. We were brought up where you didn't really strength train. It was like really frowned upon because you didn't want to be seen as bulky. Whereas actually now it's a massive part of nearly every gymnast program, because you need to be strong to handle the impact that we're doing. And they say like when we tumble on the floor, it's like 10 times your body weight when you land. Wow. So we need to be able to lift some pretty decent weights. Whereas when I grew up, we never did that. So it was kind of like you would land and then the repetitive impacts that would lead to stress fractures and things like that. So there's so many advances, which I just think has been fascinating to see. And I think a lot of my generation didn't really survive it because it was so difficult or they were so injured. And I think I'm a bit of an anomaly, the injuries I've had to actually come back from them. But for me, I think it generally has been the love for what I do. And I've always been curious to learn. I've found it incredible that I've actually managed to improve in this time, because I think there's a lot of gymnasts as well that get to a point when they get a bit stale. It's like they can't really upgrade. They either may have to reduce skills, where each cycle I've actually generally improved and continued to learn new stuff. And
what do you put that
really
down
cool.
to? Big yourself up. It's like, well.
I don't know. I'd probably say a lot of it's like my mindset.
Okay.
I would say I'm pretty tough. Like my coach always said to me, I've only been with her now for like 3-4 years, and she always says I'm like superhuman because of the stuff that I just deal with. But I think that's some of that stuff can't be taught, but I think for me that's always been really natural, which has been an asset, and I think that's helped me on my journey a lot.
What does mindset mean to you?
That's such a good question. Something that I think it's always been one of my super strengths, but also I would say as of these last 4 years, I knew about mental health, but I didn't really understand how much somebody could struggle with it until I got there myself. Because I'd always been through lots of ups and downs in my career, but I'd always been one of those people where it's like I always want to see the positive. So even if I had a big injury, it's like, okay, it sucks. It's going to be, nearly a year out, but, I can make gains and do something else. Whereas I feel like after everything that I went through in the year of 2021, especially, it kind of took me mentally to a place that I'm still having to work really hard to get out of. The only way I can explain it is it feels like something's broken in my brain. And that's really difficult when you've kind of been so used to having such a strong head, and then it feels like actually now it's not working the same. So that's something that I'm personally working on. But I think you can, if you can kind of tap into having a good mindset, it kind of is like the world's your oyster, because ultimately it controls like everything you do.
Yeah, I love how you just described that. And I think I've been there in the past. Again, I'll always refer back to my brother, because that's why I do Tom's Talks. But before I lost my brother to when he took his own life, I didn't understand what mental health was. I was only 19, so I was still very young, but I didn't get what it was. And then my brother died. I still didn't really get what it was. And then it wasn't until I went through it, and I was like, shit, this is real.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people still, they don't believe that mental ill health is a thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're fine, just get on with it. But
Yeah.
I think until you actually go through it, and you feel that way mentally, then you don't really understand.
Yeah, I completely agree, because like I say, I'm quite superficial about it sometimes, as in like, you can kind of choose your emotion, like you can choose to be positive. And I think that's kind of how I always was until this point. But I think I'd just been put through so much, and it got to a point where it was just so unbearable what was happening, that, like I say, it felt like something in my brain really switched, and that was much harder to control. And I think it took me a good few years to understand what was going on to start with, because
how did you get to understand? How would you describe that?
That's a really good question. And so it's something I'd say I'm still figuring out.
Okay.
But I think just how I was feeling all the time, I couldn't really explain it. The way I try and explain it to my psychologist is it feels like my brain's on fire.
Right.
Like there's not really a specific thought or a specific thing that can kind of set me off. But when it happens, it can be like days or it can be weeks, and then it will just stop. And that's the only way I can kind of describe it. But it feels really out of my control. And for somebody that loves to be so in control, it's really hard. And it started to affect me a lot in the gym, because obviously you need to be on such a mental game all the time. Training became really difficult. Simple tasks like sleeping, eating, all those like little things that are just supernatural, they became hard. And trying to train for an Olympic Games over these last 4 years through all of that has been hell, honestly. Which is why now I need the time to kind of take a step back and mentally just work through stuff, and see where we get. But hopefully we'll continue to make progress with it.
No, I'm confident you will with everything that you've told me. But I think, again, it goes back to we're all a million miles an hour, 100% of the time, and there's only so much you can give.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a shift in sports and in society recently, is that if you are 100% a million miles an hour 100% of the time, then you're going to hit a brick wall at some point, and you need that time to reflect and recover. And again, it's when we look at celebrating those achievements, it's looking at what went well, but it's also looking at what didn't go well.
Yeah.
What can we improve on?
Yeah.
And it's reflecting back on our goals, isn't it?
Yeah.
Having it written down and looking at it like, we're now Q1 of this year. What went well? This, great, let's celebrate that. What didn't go so well? Right, these are the improvements we need to make. And then it's like the motivation, but also the improvements to get you closer to your goal, that if you didn't stop and reflect and recover and recuperate.
Yeah. I feel like from me coming back from Paris, that was exactly that. And I kind of look back and I knew once I just had a rest, because it was so go, go, go all the time. You were physically tired, mentally tired. There was no time to really rest.
Yeah.
And I felt like the level of pressure I had on my shoulders was a completely different pressure to try and come back from what I was to what I'd ever had before as well. It all felt quite abnormal. But I think once I kind of got over those hurdles and actually got there, despite not quite having the results I wanted there, I kind of left and was like, I actually feel like a huge weight's come off my shoulders. I feel like I can breathe. I'm still really good at what I do. I really enjoy it. If I can be that good dealing with what I have had to for the past 3 to 4 years, then if we can actually have some time to work through this now and have a rest, then what else actually could I still do? And I think that for me was really exciting.
Yeah, I love that. It's all up here, isn't it? I mean, you've got to have the physical capabilities, but how many times did you come across an individual that has the physical attributes to be successful in whatever field it is in, but when they don't have it up there,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah.
And I think as well, the thing I really love about your story is that, you know, you started in gymnastics at such a young age, but would you say that you would be where you are now if you hadn't have overcome all this adversity in your life?
No, and I think despite everything, I would say that's my biggest asset, like what I've learned, which is why whatever I kind of do achieve next in gymnastics or not, I can't wait to coach, because I feel like I've learned so much. The sport has changed a huge amount, like unprecedented amount from when I was growing up in it to now. And I think there's still quite a lot of gaps that we're missing. And unfortunately, I've had to be the person that's experienced it all. But at the same time, it feels like my biggest gift now to be able to teach it, because I think a lot of people would say my career hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows, but the struggles have definitely taught me the most.
And now you can use that and help other people, which is what it's all about for me.
Yeah.
I say, you know, the finding my brother when he took his own life, me then wanting to end my life as a result, that trauma does not define who I am, but it 100% was the catalyst to who I've become.
Yeah.
And everything that I've achieved since then, would it have happened if that would have happened? I don't know. But if you can always use life's traumas and adversities and use it as fuel to become a better person yourself, but then also help other people, then again, it's life happens for you, not to you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, I'm really interested to know, what is the atmosphere like within the Olympics with the other athletes?
Each one has been quite different, and Paris was probably my favourite in terms of just being old to take it all in. But at the same time, when I did Beijing, basically gymnastics is normally on as one of the first events. So the first or second week we compete, and then there's normally like 1 to 2 weeks after where you're chilling, you can enjoy the time and like see all the other athletes and events. But after the Tokyo Games, because of COVID, they set a rule in Tokyo. It was that as soon as you finish, you had to leave because of the pandemic, which makes sense. But then coming into Paris, they kept some of that rule. So once you'd finished competing, you had 48 hours, I think, to be out of the village. So that was actually like really rubbish, because the time that you would then, most athletes are kind of like game on until you finish competing. So we finished and not everybody else was finished, and then we left. So that was actually pretty rubbish.
What was it? I mean, you can't believe everything that you read in the news, but I read quite a lot that the village was quite not the greatest place to be.
It's really mixed. It's like, it's the weirdest environment you could ever put yourself in. Because it's like, I don't know, you couldn't even imagine any other industry where for like 3 weeks of the year, the best in the whole world all get into like literally one place, and it's just like yay sports for like 3 weeks. Like it is pretty cool, and you see such a mix of people, like literally everyone in the village is in kit. So everybody's repping their country all the time. And you see like a mix of like super tall basketballers to like the gymnasts are always probably one of the smallest ones in the village. But it's just such a bizarre mix of people that you just never really experience other than in that world. There's a lot of cool things, like there's normally like a games room, there's different social rooms, the dining hall is unbelievably big. Food can be challenging because obviously they're catering for so many people, pretty samey.
And again, I can imagine that must have been a difficult thing, because everybody in their respective fields needs different kinds of nutrition.
There's normally different like cuisine sections set up. So there's such a mix. There can literally be like a fast food section, because some sports need that type of stuff. There's normally always like salad, veg. There's normally like grilled meats and fish. Then there's normally like an Indian section, a Chinese section. There's normally loads. But Paris was really bizarre because it had all these sections named, but you go in and literally all the food was basically the same at everyone. But for us, we eat pretty like simple stuff anyway as gymnasts, so it wasn't too bad. And Team GB are always fab as well. Like they normally do like a Team GB house outside of the village. Where they gave us like different spaces that are also set up by different sponsors. So for example, like Dreams Beds was a sponsor. They had like a sleep room with like loads of sleep pods and just like a space that you could just go and chill if you wanted to get out of like the hype of the village. They did good catering there. So some of the guys that were sick of village food, you could just get out and go and eat some other decent food. generally the rooms, they aren't too bad. You're kind of like in apartment blocks, usually they do single beds and then double beds. This was the first village I've been in that had a bath, so that was a revelation for me. Because for recovery, that's something that's like a staple for me. Team GB are also really good. They always set up ice baths. There's always like a downstairs station that's got like physio room, ice bath, like all the recovery stuff. Normally at 10 minutes.
In the ice bath?
Yeah. Well, it's not like the full ice. They're like set to temp. They're normally about 10 degrees. I think.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, it's not like freezing.
Sure.
Like, yeah.
I'm quite fond of an ice bath, so that's fine.
I don't mind them. I don't love them. I mean, it takes me so long to get warm again. So
when I say I'm fond of it, I never look at the ice bath and like really can't wait to get in. But it's like the benefits of it after.
Yeah. But no, overall it's pretty cool. You get given loads of free stuff, which is cool. Like all your Olympic merch, that's just like really special stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess just like the bond that you make with all the athletes as well. I'd say just being able to call yourself an Olympian for the rest of your life, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, wow, I can imagine. I can imagine as well being in that environment, like maybe, obviously you've been in that environment for such a long time, it might not feel the same, or it might, but it's maybe somebody like me that's not an athlete or a gymnast or an Olympian, if you were to go in that environment and then you're seeing all these incredible people on television and then you're going in and you're seeing everybody in person, you're like, holy shit, like this is a lot of cool people. You
still kind of get that, I guess, even as the athletes, like, you could literally just be queuing up for dinner and then there's like, I don't know, Carlos Alcaraz kind of type, like literally just like there. But it's just who's around.
Were you ever fangirling anyone or?
Not massively. Like Simone was like the star of the games, but for us, Simone is just Simone because she's been in gymnastics bios.
Yeah.
Because she's been in for so long. It was cool to see the tennis players. Andy, like it's when you're in a Team GB space as well. I guess it is like that for each country, but like everyone's then just one team. But like normally you'd never go to an event and then like Andy Murray's just like in the lift. So like those type of things is cool. But everyone's like generally super friendly, which is really nice. And yeah, it is a weird world. And it's like you're just in a bubble because everything's free. Then you go home, there's like vending machines everywhere, so you can just tap and get free water, free Coke for like a month. Then you go home and you're like, I've got to pay.
Apple Pay's a thing. No, I can imagine the experience is like none other, and wow, some journey. Yeah,
pretty mad. It's cool. It is cool to look back. Yeah.
So if you could go back then to 14-year-old Becky, when you've just been told that you're going to the Commonwealth Games in Australia, what would you say to her?
Gosh. I think for any of my events, just take it all in. Because for me, you never know whatever age you're at, which is going to be your last. And yeah, just enjoy the experience, because I think the more fun you have, which was something that we weren't really brought up to enjoy it as much as like the gymnasts are now, which is really positive to see, is like, yeah, those are the things that you remember. You remember being with your teammates, you remember the hard sessions, the results are great, but there's always another event and the results disappear just as quick as they come. Like I say, it's the journey, it's the people that are around you that make the biggest difference. Yeah, I love that. And going back to, we talked about mindset and how important your mindset is. I honestly think that if you have the right mindset, no matter what you've been through, trauma, adversity, or challenges you've had to overcome, if you always have the right mindset and you're evidence of this, then you can still achieve whatever you want. In the times where you've had the more prevalent struggles, when things have been more difficult, what is it that you've either said to yourself or you've done to get through that difficult time, like the discipline of just, having to persevere through it? For people, again, this podcast is here to help others listening, and your vulnerabilities, my vulnerabilities, and other guests as well will help people. But for somebody listening that's going through that difficult time right now, sharing your experiences, what would you say to that? A few things. I think surrounding yourself with a good group of people, people that you know that you can openly talk to. My family, I'm from a big family, so we're always an open book. I've got a good group of friends, and I'd say my coach has been a real staple throughout these last couple of years for me, especially with everything that I've been dealing with training-wise. And I'm trying to think what else. Talking about it. Like, it was hard for me to kind of get to a point to explain what I felt was going on. That was really challenging. But I think once I did that and started to open up more, no matter who that was to, that was something that was helpful. And also for me, always having a goal. As soon as I lost my brother, I was back in the gym really quick through my choice, but it helped me to kind of distract me a little bit, take my mind off it. Ellie was the opposite. Ellie was like any time off and any time away. I think it's kind of whatever suits you. But for me, I think gymnastics has been something that has really helped because it's something that I love. And I also know he wouldn't have wanted me to stop doing that because of what happened either. So it's kind of, I think just having those goals and things to keep striving for. And they might be more challenging with what you are facing at the time. But I think it's appreciating then like just the tiny little steps that you are actually making towards achieving them, and that you are still trying despite what you're dealing with as well.
Would you say as well the adversity of losing your brother and overcoming that adversity added to the mindset that you have today?
Yeah, I think when you go through something like that, I think you never expect something like that to happen to you because
was it sudden, the loss of your brother?
Yeah, he had a undiagnosed heart condition where he had a sudden cardiac arrest, and that was it basically.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So we've learned a huge amount about, I guess, like just all the different heart diseases there are. And for me, just promoting awareness of, I didn't even really understand the use of a defibrillator until that point. So kind of make sure you get your defibrillators attached to your buildings. So that was really hard. And you just don't expect to ever experience something like that. You hear stories of things, but until it actually happens to you, I think it instantly changes who you are as a person and changes your life because you realise how quickly things can change. And it makes all of the things that you feel like are important, they're really not important when something that big happens. For me, I think you say the journey, the people, is those are the things that are going to be a constant and going to be forever. Like your successes, people are going to forget that. Like, they're great at the time, but it's who you're with, and like how much you value yourself as well, like how you see yourself as the biggest thing.
I absolutely love that. It's been an honour to have you on.
Thanks for having
to
me.
be sat in front of an Olympian. I never thought I'd be saying that when I started this podcast. Thank you for being so honest and sharing your vulnerabilities, and I'm sure for the people listening it will help them a huge amount. So thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.